Hey guys, in this video I'll be talking about the bodybuilders who I believe are uncrowned Mr. Olympias. By uncrowned Mr. Olympia, I mean competitors who were super close to winning the title, yet weren't able to or were prevented from winning due to politics. With all of these videos, this list will be subjective in order and slightly subjective when it comes to the actual competitors, so do let me know in the comments down below if there is anyone that I miss or if you would change the rankings. Before the video does start, if you guys are enjoying my content, a like and sub would really be awesome, and with all that being said, let's get into this video. Starting off the list at number 8 is none other than Flex Wheeler at the 1993 Mr. Olympia, the only Olympia where Flex could have actually had a shot at winning in my opinion. Now this one isn't as controversial as some of the others on this list, but it's still worth mentioning because Flex brought a physique that many would describe as perfect. 1993 was a pivotal year for bodybuilding, as Dorian Yates was solidifying his reign as Mr. Olympia, which did usher in the era of mass monsters with his unmatched size and shredded condition. But then you had Flex Wheeler, whose physique was on the opposite end of the spectrum, a true masterpiece of symmetry, flow, and aesthetics, with beautiful lines and a superhero-esque look. Sure, Flex wasn't as hard or grainy as Dorian, and he didn't have the freaky size that the judges favored at the time, but his shape, it was arguably the best we've ever seen. His V-taper was flawless, his muscle bellies were full, and everything just flowed together perfectly. If the judging criteria had leaned a little bit more towards aesthetics and the classical proportions of the past, rather than sheer mass, there's a good chance that Flex could have walked away with the Sandow, forever changing the course of bodybuilding. While Dorian did dominate in condition and mass, Flex's statue-like physique could have easily swayed a different set of judges at the time. It's a decision that could have gone either way, and that's why I think that Flex should make it on this list. In 7th place, we've got Kevin Levrone's 1995 Mr. Olympia appearance. Now, when you think of Kevin's career, there's no denying that he had multiple shots at the title, but 1995 was the closest he ever came in my opinion. In 1992, Kevin was still growing into his own, and although he did place second, Dorian was already leagues ahead in terms of size and development. By the early 2000s, Kevin was still impressive, placing second in 2000 and 2002, but his best years were behind him when it came to the lower body. But in 1995, that was definitely a real showdown. Kevin came in with an incredible combination of size, shape, and condition. His upper body was insane, capped shoulders, thick chest, and arms that just seemed to go on forever, and just tons of size. And then his flow, it was really second to none when it came to him versus Dorian. On the other hand, you had Dorian Yates, who was at his absolute peak in terms of size and condition, but, and that's a pretty big but, Dorian still had that torn bicep, and it really hurt his symmetry and flow. Kevin might not have been as dry as Dorian, but his shape and proportions were light years ahead. This one was definitely close. Kevin lost out because Dorian's sheer mass and razor-sharp condition were just a little bit too much for the judges to ignore, and he had set that standard for the past 4 years. But if you were to judge this one purely on aesthetics and flow, Kevin might have walked away with the Sandow. It's one of those what could have happened moments in bodybuilding history, similar to Flex in 1993, which is why I think that Kevin also deserves a spot on this list. Next on the list at number 6 is Kai Green's 2014 Mr. Olympia package. Now, Kai is no stranger to being in Phil Heath's shadow, but this year felt a little different. This one was the closest Kai ever came to dethroning Phil, and for a lot of fans, it's the year that he should have won. Kai brought everything to the stage in 2014, in my opinion. He had the size, the condition, and that unique posing style that always set him apart from Phil Heath. His midsection looked far better than Phil's in my opinion in the front poses, giving him a much cleaner look. Now, it wasn't the best from the side, being even worse than Phil's if you can imagine that, with neither looking great in that aspect. That said, the back poses were super close, and depending on how you see it, you could argue that, Kai edged out Phil here as well. Phil did dominate the side poses, no question, having more detail, hardness, and three-dimensionality to his muscles, but this wasn't the most dominant version of Phil Heath that we had seen till this day. What makes this year stand out even more is just how close it was between these two. The debate wasn't just among fans, there was real tension between Kai and Phil on stage, with moments that felt like an ultra-heavyweight boxing match of sorts, rather than a bodybuilding competition. Ultimately, the judges went with Phil Heath, but there's a very solid case to be made for Kai. This was his last Olympia appearance, and it's hard to not wonder what might have been if the judges had leaned his way. Coming in at number 5, we have Shawn Ray, and I'm including 2 years here, 1994 and 1996. Shawn was the epitome of a classic bodybuilder, perfect proportions, razor-sharp condition, and a stage presence that commanded attention, even at his, shorter stature. Now, in both years, Shawn was the runner-up to Dorian Yates, but let's break down why he could have won. In 1994, Shawn Ray brought one of the most polished and balanced physiques we've ever seen on the Olympia stage. While Dorian Yates was still the reigning champion, this was not the dominant Dorian we had come to expect. Prejudging was, especially telling. Dorian's conditioning was noticeably off there. He had a bloated appearance, particularly in the midsection, which detracted from the usual sharpness of his physique. Adding to this, the torn bicep he suffered before the competition created a clear imbalance in his front double bicep pose. This once dominant shot now exposed his flaw, and his overall symmetry took a hit. Meanwhile, Shawn Ray was at his absolute best. He didn't just show up in shape, he peaked perfectly. His razor-sharp conditioning combined with his near-flawless symmetry and proportion made him stand out in every single posing round. Shawn's flow and aesthetics were unmatched as well. He was a textbook example of what many fans consider the ideal bodybuilding physique. His V-taper was stunning, his waist was impossibly tight, and his muscle bellies were full and round. On top of all this, his posing was elegant and precise, further emphasizing his superior presentation when compared to Dorian Yates. Now, why didn't he win? Well, Dorian's sheer size and freak factor really couldn't be ignored by the judges. Even when he was off, Dorian was still massive, with a back that dwarfed everyone else's on stage. His thickness and density were unparalleled, and the judges still leaned towards the mass and condition over aesthetics. That said, in 1994, Shawn Ray did come closer than ever to dethroning the Shadow, and many fans still argue that he should have walked away with the Sandow that year. Fast forward to 1996, and Shawn Ray was still at the top of his game. By this time, he had established himself as one of the most consistent bodybuilders in history, always bringing a world-class package to the Olympia stage. In 1996, Shawn came in arguably better than ever. He was sharper, more refined, and showcased a physique that had only improved with time. Dorian Yates, however, was a different story. The reigning champion entered the competition visibly hampered by injury. His torn bicep was still a glaring issue, which effectively barred him from winning the front double against really anyone. While he was still massive and shredded, no doubt, it was not enough to completely mask these flaws. Shawn, on the other hand, brought a physique that looked like it had been chiseled right out of stone. His conditioning was razor-sharp, with every muscle group popping under the stage light. His symmetry was picture-perfect like it was in every other show basically, and his stage presence was very good. He was the definition of a complete bodybuilder. Every pose was on point and the midsection remained tight and defined, a stark contrast to Dorian's ever-widening waistline. But once again, size played a pivotal role in the judging, with Dorian's overwhelming mass and density being too much for Shawn to overcome in the eyes of the judges. The 90s were an era where mass monsters reigned supreme, and while Shawn's aesthetic dominance was undeniable, it definitely was not enough to overshadow the sheer size disparity between him and Dorian. Still, Shawn's 1996 package remains one of the most impressive in Olympia history. It was a testament to his relentless consistency and his ability to evolve as an athlete. While he didn't claim the title, he solidified his legacy as one of the greatest bodybuilders to never win the Olympia title, and perhaps he's the most, deserving competitor who never won the Olympia title, who should have won the Olympia title in your opinion. The 2002 Mr. Olympia is one of the most debated competitions of the early 2000s, and Gunter Schlierkampf's 5th place finish is a decision that still puzzles fans to this day, myself included. Gunter came into the 2002 Mr. Olympia with a physique that many believed deserved a top spot. He was massive, peeled, and complete in every way, and many other bodybuilders of the time really couldn't match that. His wide frame carried an incredible amount of muscle, yet he maintained a very impressive level of symmetry. His conditioning was razor sharp, with striated quads, a deeply etched midsection, and a back that was both wide and detailed. What really made this placing controversial, though, was the state of the rest of the top 5. Ronnie Coleman, who won the title, was noticeably off, appearing smaller and less conditioned than in the previous years. Kevin Levrone, who placed second, had a phenomenal upper body but really struggled with the overall leg size and detail. Meanwhile, Chris Cormier and Dexter Jackson looked pretty good, but lacked the size to compete with the far larger Gunter. The crowd certainly seemed to think that Gunter deserved better. When he was called out for 5th place, the reaction was one of shock and outrage, a rare moment of universal agreement among bodybuilding fans. And what makes this decision even more intriguing is what happened after the Olympia. At the 2002 GNC Show of Strength, just weeks after the Mr. Olympia, Gunter Schlierkamp defeated Ronnie Coleman outright, proving that he was capable of standing toe-to-toe with the reigning champion. In hindsight, Gunter's 2002 Olympia showing remains a testament to his potential and is a reminder of how subjective bodybuilding is. While he didn't walk away with the title, he earned the respect and admiration of fans around the world and certainly deserves a spot on this list. The 1997 Mr. Olympia is one of the most controversial contests in bodybuilding history, and Nasser Elm's second-place finish is a decision that continues to divide fans to this day. In my opinion, Nasser was at his absolute peak in 1997. His physique was a blend of mass, aesthetics, and detail that made him one of the most formidable competitors of the 1990s. He had the size to stand next to Dorian Yates, and he also maintained better proportions and flow at this show. His quads were massive and nicely separated, his chest was thick and striated, and his arms were some of the best in the business. His conditioning was solid, though not the best on stage, but his overall presentation was undeniable. Dorian Yates, on the other hand, was not at his best in 1997. His physique showed clear signs of wear and tear, with his torn bicep and tricep disrupting the symmetry. His midsection was also less controlled, which further detracted from his overall look. Despite these flaws, Dorian's incredible back development and freakish density were enough to secure him the win, in the judges' eyes at least. Many fans, however, believed that Nasser should have taken the title. They argued that his cleaner lines, superior symmetry, and a lack of any major flaws made him the rightful winner. While I do personally think that Dorian deserved the win at this show, it is hard to deny that Nasser was incredibly close. His 1997 package is a prime example of a physique that could have easily won in a different era or under slightly different judging criteria. And setting my opinions aside, Nasser most definitely deserves a spot on an uncrowned Mr. Olympia list. Tom Platz in 1981 should have absolutely taken the Olympia title home, and the fact that he was placed 3rd place is one of the greatest injustices in bodybuilding history, at least in my opinion. To say that he was robbed is almost an understatement. Platz was in incredible shape, bringing a razor-sharp package that highlighted his strengths, particularly his unmatched leg development. His quads were enormous, deeply striated, and perfectly separated, setting a benchmark for lower body development that still stands today. What makes his loss even more frustrating is the lineup that placed ahead of him. Franco Colombo, the eventual winner, was far from his prime. He was lacking in flow and proportions, with an imbalanced physique that was painfully evident when standing next to Platz. The most glaring issue were definitely Franco's legs, as they were nearly, non-existent basically, which was a stark contrast to Platz's world-class quads. Chris Dickerson, who placed 2nd, brought a very polished and symmetrical physique, but lacked the standout qualities that would justify him beating Platz. He was good, but really nothing special. Platz's overall package was just undeniable. He displayed razor-sharp condition with clear signs of striated glutes, a rarity in 1981, mind you, and a balanced upper body to complement his legendary legs. The symmetry was on point, and he had none of the injuries or imbalances that would later hinder his career. His posing routine was also very masterful, accentuating his strengths while minimizing any minor weaknesses. To add to the controversy of this Olympia, Danny Padilla was another competitor who many believe had a stronger case for the title than either Franco or Chris. Padilla brought a flawless, compact physique with incredible condition, but even then, Platz's size, density, and leg dominance arguably gave him the edge over the slightly smaller Padilla. Ultimately, Platz's combination of dense muscularity, aesthetic flow, and polished presentation made him the clear standout in my opinion. The fact that Franco, with all his glaring flaws like the legs and the gyno, walked away with the title is just a blemish on the credibility of the Olympia overall. Platz not only deserved to win, but he also cemented his place in history as one of the greatest uncrowned Mr. Olympias of all time. His legacy as a pioneer of leg development is also very important here, and he's obviously a fan favorite among many fans today, and I just think it'd be wrong to not include him on a list like this. The 2007 Mr. Olympia remains, in my opinion, the biggest robbery in bodybuilding history. Victor Martinez brought a physique that was superior to Jay Cutler's in almost every way, yet somehow the title went to Jay. Victor was at his all-time best in 07, his physique was balanced, symmetrical, and incredibly well-conditioned, and his legs were just massive and separated at that time, his back was detailed and very wide, and his midsection was tight and controlled. He had no glaring weaknesses, which made his overall package one of the most complete on stage that year, and possibly one of the most complete of all time. Jay Cutler, on the other hand, was not at his best. His conditioning was noticeably off, and his physique appeared soft and bloated almost compared to Victor's. His midsection in particular was a major weak point, and his overall look lacked the polish and sharpness that you would expect from a reigning champion. The decision to award Jay the title was met with widespread criticism afterwards. Fans and analysts alike pointed out the clear differences in condition and presentation, with many arguing that Victor was the rightful winner. And unlike many other controversial decisions, this one didn't feel close. I mean, Victor was clearly the better bodybuilder that night. Unfortunately, Victor never came this close to the Olympia title again. Injuries and other setbacks derailed his career, making 07 a bittersweet moment in his legacy. But for those who witnessed that contest, there's really no doubt that Victor Martinez deserved to be crowned Mr. Olympia, and therefore that's why I think he's the most, deserving of the title of Uncrowned Mr. Olympia. Anyways, guys, that about does it for this video. If you guys enjoyed, a like and sub would be awesome, and do let me know down below if you guys agree with my list. With that all being said, though, I'll see you on the next one. Thanks for watching.